Hey everybody, I'm Scott with the Porter Group. Guess what we're talking about today? Delayed feedback, exactly. Yeah, you see what I did there? We're off to a great start. What I'm introducing today is the concept that real estate happens in sales cycles. And typically a closing period is going to be 30 to 45, maybe as much as 60 days after that contract is signed. So the business is kind of transacted here, and then it's not until 30 or 45 days later when the transaction closes that we actually get that sales data. So the feedback of how the market responds to the conditions is always 30 to 60 days behind. And if we talk about larger industry changes, well, then those happen on a more extended scale as well. But already we've seen some sales posted for the year 2023, and so I want to take a look at those and then tell you what happened just 30 or 45 days prior that caused those somewhat disappointing or lackluster sales figures. So January 2022 was down, or 2023, whatever, it's a typo, you get it. January of this year was down 10% compared to January of 2022. So if you go back and look at what might have caused that disappointing sales figure, you would have to go back to November 10th when the interest rates hit their peak of 7.1%. Now, sellers at that time were looking at Thanksgiving, looking at Christmas, and hearing in the media that, oh, interest rates just hit their peak at 7. We don't know if this is the end or if we're going to get up to 7.5%, 8%. And so they probably hit the panic button at that time. I know if you ask me, I definitely saw showing requests slow down a lot. Not as many buyers come into our open houses, things of that nature. And then 45 days later, right, January, since we did have the holidays to account for, that's when we saw such disappointing sales figures. Rates started falling at that point, and that's when we knew, okay, that might have been the ceiling that we hit for this little interest rate rise and dip cycle. By December, right before Christmas, we were at 6.3, nearly a full point better on our interest rates. That freed up some buyers who were looking at those loan estimates for the first time to make the decision to buy. Of course, we season through our holidays and then we get after it that first or second week of January. I'll tell you, it absolutely happened that I had people calling saying, Scott, I'm ready to get started now that it's the new year. Well, then we see February sales figures up 1% compared to February of 2022. So that's the delayed feedback cycle that I'm talking about. So what's happening today is not going to show up for 30 or 45 days from now. That's just the nature of real estate. In February 9th, we hit that declining interest rate environment when we got to a full point below where it got to its peak. That happened on February 9th. So what do you think that means for March sales figures once those are released in that second week of April? Probably going to be pretty good, right? And it might be lackluster because, again, we began our climb at that point, and if you look at rates today, we're at 6.75. So we've got a lot of volatility here with the rates, but the feedback loop, the delayed feedback, isn't going to occur for 30 or 45 days from this point. Just a thought-provoking topic to let you know that what we see today doesn't show up until later, and you really need a realtor who's in the mix on the daily, helping you understand what you're seeing in the marketplace to help you make good decisions.